Now, I did want to give you guys a word of caution regarding implicit waits. Now, don't worry, I didn't forget about the disadvantages. Remember I said I was going to talk about them? And now we are going to discuss those. And the disadvantages are paramount to understanding the difference between an implicit wait and the other different kinds of wait that Selenium WebDriver provides for us. So, one of the disadvantages regarding a Selenium implicit wait is that it can extend the runtime of our tests. Now, imagine with me an application that goes from dev to test to prod, right? A standard process. And so we have our application here on dev. And then the application goes to test. And then it goes to prod. A good and wise QA engineer will write a test here. And our test is going to wait for 5 seconds using an implicit wait because our application is a little bit slower here. So we're going to set it to 5 seconds to make sure that all of the elements are loading so that whenever we're checking for them, that they appear and all of our tests pass. Hooray. Now we move that application to test, and we don't change the code, we rerun it and everything continues working. And then we finally move it to prod. Hooray, everything is working fine, and we left our implicit wait timeout of 5 seconds. So, what is the problem that we have just caused? Well, dev is usually much slower than production because production is used to support tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of users hitting the application. So it probably has many load balancers, many servers supporting this production environment, while dev just needs a few developers to be hitting the application. Test maybe a little bit more. If we're lucky, our test will mimic prod, but sometimes it doesn't. So, because production is much beefier, usually the application performs much better. Therefore, we are actually slowing down our test cases because they may not need to be polling for 5 seconds for every single element. Let me show you what I mean here. Imagine this application, right? And it loads in a certain period of time. You can see that it takes a certain period of time for the application to actually load. The elements themselves don't take that long to load. It's the actual traffic to go to the server, to fetch the content, pull all the content back. That part usually takes a little bit longer than fetching the rest of the content. So if we're transitioning from page to page, yes, we need a implicit wait of 5 seconds to be able to wait for the next element, right? If I was validating that this image is present here, 5 seconds is probably sufficient to check that it's there. But now, if I want to interact with one of these other elements, I probably should not be waiting for 5 seconds to see if they're present. I should probably be waiting for 1-2 seconds maximum, because if this page is loaded and this element is present right here, I don't need to be waiting for 5 seconds for these elements. Or even worse, if your application is really slow, and sometimes, yes, I have taken my implicit wait timeouts to 30 or a minute. So now imagine this page loads and this image is present, but for whatever reason this button doesn't exist or this image doesn't exist, and you're sitting and waiting for it for 30 seconds or a minute to come up before actually failing the test. That is a lot of wasted time. And of course, you're going to have many tests that do these kinds of checks, and now because there is a bug in the code, you're going to be sitting and waiting for this element for 30 seconds before knowing that a test has actually failed, when instead, you probably should have waited much less. So that's what I mean. It can actually make your test slower. When it comes to actually finding failures, it's going to significantly slow you down because it's going to wait for that duration of time for the element until it is no longer on the page and then times out. And so what are you going to do? Are you going to write another implicitly wait statement to decrease that time here to deal with these elements? And so you're going to decrease it to what, 2 seconds? But remember, that's for the duration of the lifespan of the driver. So now, at every single point in your test, whenever you're ready to deal with a different kind of wait, you need to write a new implicit wait statement. And then you need to be able to manage that implicit waits to know how long it is, where it was set, and be able to set it and reset it appropriately so that your test is working well.